What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today when I talk to you about MicroStrategy, they just unveiled their earnings. I want to go over some of the absolute key highlights that you need to kind of take away from it from an investor standpoint. And then aside from that, I'm going to go over some of the data points and some support and resistance points that you really need to watch going into the next couple of trading days. Before we get into any of that, hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So it did close at 336, went down 1.22%. After hours. The estimates were this for the most part, so I'm going to go over that once the highlights once we go over that. But earnings per share -1 cent, and then revenue 115.18 million. As far as the implied move though, it was 5.73, so this earnings was rather timid, so kind of on the low end, which I think in general that's kind of a good thing all in all. Shorts though, they did return 163,000 shares. I like to analyze what shorts do because it kind of goes to show what they were really planning. And so as far as this, if we kind of look a little bit closer, shorts were somewhat returning going into their earnings, so insinuating maybe they saw a beat. Still though, for being the size it is, 10.16% of the free floats being shorted is relatively high. You do see some signs of manipulation, so cost to borrow minimum is negative, meaning there is a broker out there physically paying people to short this stock. But just for transparency purposes, I think that's just to drum up business, definitely not a squeeze play, because in total it's still only 10%, so nothing again crazy. $8.26 billion worth of shorts are in it right now though. Moving over to options, there was 249 million in calls, 218 million in puts. A lot of big money getting in throughout the day, even just between 12:25 and 12:30. I clearly can't read right now. 9 million in premiums, so definitely a lot of money was getting in. Although 47% of all the options being done today were bearish in nature and huge numbers, so 466 million in total premiums, 282 yesterday, then 513 the day prior. As far as this is concerned, of the call options, there was a good consensus for it to be roughly around that $400 range, so a lot of optimism for that. Bears on the flip side, they were anticipating for it to be sub 320 for the most part. So I think it did gravitate more so towards what the bears are anticipating. And with it at 332 after hours, it is trading between these 2 points, so this pivot and this S1. So 301 is going to be that next strong support, and then 343 is going to be the next strong target / resistance. In my opinion, I feel like this stock, especially with the rebranding and many things that they did announce from their earnings that I'm going to go over in a second, there could be a buy the dip type of scenario that does play out where it does touch this pivot point. But regardless, just kind of take note of some of the strong support and resistance points. Aside from that, from their earnings, there wasn't any new analyst ratings. You did have one that came out the day prior, which doesn't logically make all that much sense, but you did have BTIG, Andrew, who has a 69% success rating, gave a buy $570 price target. As a consensus of all the ratings, you have $557, and that does represent a 65% upside. So yeah, most likely tomorrow you're going to get a lot of new ratings. So I think this is the only stock that I've covered so far that had their earnings today that didn't get any new ratings, but nonetheless I think that could be a very positive thing. One thing to take note of though, the lowest rating that did come out was 289. That was 7 months ago. Recently, the lowest one over the last let's say couple months is roughly $510. So that was done 2 months ago. So yeah, there's still a hell of a lot more upside anticipated. So with that said, I'm going to go over some of the absolute key highlights from their earnings that you need to kind of be aware of from an investor standpoint. So don't forget to hit that thumbs up, give yourself a shout out if you bought, if you were planning on selling. Let me know your viewpoint on all that.
MicroStrategy rebrands as Strategy with 15% BTC yield target for 2025. Earnings Call Insights, MicroStrategy Incorporated, MSTR Q4 2024 Management View. The company officially announced its rebranding to Strategy, reflecting a simplified, ambitious direction focusing on digital capital and business intelligence. Alongside the rebranding, a new website and merchandise store were launched to enhance transparency and community engagement. Strategy reported a 50% year-over-year increase in current subscription billings and a 48% year-over-year rise in subscription services revenues during Q4 2024. CEO Fang Lei highlighted the company's inclusion in the Nasdaq 100 index, projecting it as a key milestone for institutional Bitcoin adoption. The company also added 3 new board members with expertise in digital assets and capital markets. CFO Andrew Kang stated, Q4 was the most successful quarter of adding Bitcoin to our balance sheet since the adoption of our Bitcoin strategic reserve. 𝗪𝗓𝗧𝗧, executive chairman, emphasized, "We are going to buy and hold Bitcoin indefinitely, exclusively, and securely." Reiterating the focus on Bitcoin as the company's primary treasury reserve asset, outlook, management raised its BTC yield target for 2025 to 15%, up from 6%, 10%, aiming for a $10 billion BTC dollar gain. The company plans to focus on fixed income securities issuance in 2025, including convertible notes and preferred stock, while maintaining a long-term leverage target of 20% minus 30% of Bitcoin holding value. Strategy intends to continue its 21-21 plan, targeting $42 billion in capital raises through 2027, split evenly between equity and fixed income. Financial results. Q4 2024 software revenues totaled $121 million, a 3% year-over-year decrease. Aligning with the ongoing transition to a cloud-based model, full-year software revenues reached $464 million, down 7% year-over-year. Subscription services revenues grew to $106.7 million for the full year, increasing 32% year-over-year, driven by strong customer migrations to the cloud and new customer wins. The company acquired 218,887 bitcoins in Q4 2024 at an average price of $93,600 per bitcoin. As of February 2, 2025, Bitcoin holdings totaled 471,107. Valued at $46 billion, a $12.75 billion cumulative positive adjustment to retained earnings will be reflected in Q1 2025 due to the adoption of the FASB's fair value accounting standard for Bitcoin holdings. Q&A. Andrew Kang addressed a question on strike dividends, explaining that the company would use all available capital sources, including its ATM program, to ensure perpetual dividend obligations are met. 𝗪𝗓𝗧𝗧 responded to a query on potential unrealized capital gains taxes, stating that while the company views such a scenario as unlikely, it would not fundamentally impact its Bitcoin strategy. Sentiment analysis. Analysts expressed interest in the flexibility and sustainability of the company's innovative financial instruments. Though concerns regarding long-term debt servicing and capital structure were raised, their tone was slightly positive, reflecting confidence in Strategy's market positioning and execution capabilities. Management maintained a confident tone, particularly in discussing Bitcoin adoption and the company's ability to achieve BTC yield targets. Phrases such as, "We are confident and we will continue to adapt swiftly," underscored this sentiment. Compared to the previous quarter, management's tone showed increased enthusiasm, bolstered by achievements in Q4 and optimistic 2025 targets. Quarter-over-quarter comparison. Guidance language became more assertive, with BTC yield targets raised to 15% for 2025 compared to the previous range of 6% minus 10%. Strategic focus evolved with the rebranding to Strategy and the introduction of new financial products like Strike Convertible Preferred Stock. Analysts showed increased interest in the capital structure and flexibility of financial instruments compared to broader Bitcoin adoption discussions in Q3. Management's confidence in executing its treasury strategy grew, supported by significant capital raises and Bitcoin acquisitions, risks, and concerns. Management acknowledged potential challenges from unrealized capital gains taxes, but expressed confidence in mitigating any impacts through dialogue with regulators. Analysts raised concerns regarding the sustainability of interest expense coverage, which management indicated would be addressed through disciplined capital raises and cost management. Final takeaway. Strategy's Q4 2024 earnings call emphasized its transition to a rebranded identity, a sharp focus on Bitcoin as a treasury reserve asset, and ambitious financial targets for 2025. The company's strategic initiatives, including increased BTC yield targets and innovative financial instruments, underline its confidence in maintaining long-term value creation for shareholders. Management's ability to adapt swiftly to market dynamics and leverage its position as the largest corporate Bitcoin holder remains pivotal to its growth trajectory.